Trump in the middle of the day had this post where he said the California election, and this is not a direct quote, but the California election is rigged, and we're going to look into this, and so on. Well, this is really interesting in a number of different ways, because what's happening in the California election, there are elections all over the country today. It's an election day, and the California election has a number of different pieces of it. But what he was referencing was Proposition 50. Proposition 50 is a retaliation for Texas doing a really rare mid-cycle redistricting of the state of Texas to create more Republican districts, to send more Republicans to the House of Representatives, because Trump is very concerned clearly about the 2026 elections. So when Texas did that, which is really bonkers, right? Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, said, hey, listen, two can play at that game. And so California has been districted by a commission, but Newsom went in, the Democrats went in front of voters and said, listen, we don't want to change this. The Democrats as an entire national party would like to get rid of partisan gerrymandering altogether. It's a stupid system. We want to get rid of it. But if they're going to do this, we've got to fight fire with fire. So they proposed redistricting California to create 5 more Democratic-dominated districts, which would wipe out 5 of the Republicans in the House of Representatives from California. Only temporarily. It's not a permanent thing like Texas is designed to be. It expires in 2030, right before the next redistricting with the census, because they're saying, honestly, we're not trying to do this full time. This is what we're trying to do. It appeared before the election like that was going to win. Who knows? We don't know, because the elections aren't going to be over there for hours. But Trump was so worried about it. He went on social media and announced, and I forget about what time it was today. I want to say it was noonish, but I don't remember off the top of my head, which is like 9 o'clock in California. And said that these were rigged, and we're going to see about this. And then Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, said, yeah, the elections in California are rigged. It's a fact. It's not a fact. There's no evidence of this. They're making this up. And I've talked forever about the history of the right wing saying that that any election they lose is rigged. That actually comes from the 1990s. And, it's been a thing for 2 generations. And there's no evidence for it. As I keep saying, voter fraud is extraordinarily rare. Election fraud, in which the Republicans say we got to throw out all these votes, is becoming increasingly common with every election in this moment. So he said that, and I think this is really worth watching, because my guess is he is trying to set up the idea that the redistricting of California, if in fact voters choose that, was fraudulent, and setting up the idea of not seating representatives from California. And I'm really concerned about this going forward, because you sit there and you say it's not possible. They couldn't do that. There's a law against that, as there has been since I think it was 1969. If a representative is qualified, they have to be seated. But if the government says it was an illegitimate election, it's a different kettle of fish. That's exactly what he tried to do in the 2020 election, is to say that a number of the election districts in Georgia were fraudulent. They were not. There was never evidence of this. It went to court again and again and again. But that was what the people working with him tried to argue for throwing out votes for President Joe Biden in the 2020 election. So I think this is worth watching, because I think that this is what he is trying to set up. And I will also point out that Adelita Grijalva of Arizona was elected on September 23rd. She is not seated in Congress yet, and they could do it. The Congress is is technically in session. They're in pro forma sessions. He could swear her anytime. He's refusing to do so. Why is he refusing to do so? Because she says she's going to be the final vote on, not the vote, the final signature on the discharge petition that will require the House to vote on the release of the Epstein files. And, it's pretty likely that a number of Republicans, if forced to vote on it, are going to vote yes, because their constituents are really beating the drum on that. Once again, I believe it's close to 80% of Americans want those files out there, with, of course, the survivors' information redacted. So I think that's really worth watching. So we're here in this moment, and that sense of panic with the president is palpable. I've talked a lot about how he's mentally not okay, but let's push that a little bit further. These Epstein files are out there, and we're seeing more and more in the news, not just of the sexual assault of children by privileged men, but also of the money involved. Lots of billions of dollars involved. And here's the thing. That money is going to have left a record. It's going to have left trails. And there are already lawsuits and real attempts to get access to information about where that money was going and who was paying that money. That's getting hotter, even though it's not really making the news as much as some of the other stuff is. But there's also something else going on the radical right that I think is so interesting. And that's that the MAGA Republicans are in the middle of a vicious fight. And it's one that's been coming for 50 years. And that is the last 2 weeks ago now, Tucker Carlson, you probably remember from the Fox News channel, right-wing webcaster now, who has always shown a very close affinity for Viktor Orban in Hungary and also for Vladimir Putin in Russia, gave an interview of more than 2 hours to a man named Nick Fuentes. Fuentes was a right-winger who spent a little bit of time at Boston University and then got kicked out of sort of the more establishment figure based party events because he showed up at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia in August of 2017, where they shouted really anti-Semitic and racist, sort of Nazi adjacent and sometimes straight Nazi slogans. They were called the alt-right then and neo-Nazis. He went off and began having his own webcast and started to pull together a bunch of people who became known as Groypers. And they attacked the establishment from the right. And he has admired Hitler. He has denied the Holocaust. He is virulently anti-Semitic and racist and sexist. I mean, he's the whole kettle, right? And they've really been trying to keep him aside. And one of the things that he did when Charlie Kirk was alive, and Charlie Kirk was the guy who started Turning Point USA, which was a right-wing organization for college students, but was much more establishment. He attacked Kirk constantly, partly for attention, but partly from the right. And he, when Kirk was killed, it wasn't really clear who was going to pick up Kirk's followers. And what appears to be happening is that Fuentes has started to pick up that right-wing youth movement. And Tucker Carlson appears to have seen that and decided he was going to get in on that. And he platformed Fuentes. Fuentes is now in a big story in the New York Times. But here's the issue. Fuentes is openly embracing Adolf Hitler, Nazi imagery, the whole thing. And at the same time, you're starting to see the sort of open embrace of Hitler and Nazi imagery and Nazi language in younger Republicans. Remember last month, I think it was, the young Republicans from 4 states, works, their chat was exposed, and it was really horrific stuff, including admiration for Hitler and jokes about gas chambers and things, all that. Anyway, when all this came out, the leader of the Federalist Society, which was always sort of the heart of movement conservatism in the 1980s, sort of defended this whole Tucker Carlson for doing this. And he too, his name is Kevin Roberts, he's the key guy behind Project 2025, and he's a real admirer of Viktor Orban as well. So when that happened, a lot of sort of more establishment Republicans who had put up with the rise of this far right and with Trump as a leader of this far right looked at this and they're like, we can't go full Nazi. We just can't go full Nazi. So they started turning on that group of people who were starting to form around or starting to slide even further right toward the Groypers. And they're saying, we can't go there. That included Mitch McConnell, for example, who's 83 years old and is going to be leaving the Senate in 2027. And a lot of those people who were willing to go along with Trump and the Groypers and everybody else, so long as it meant they could stay in power, and are now recognizing they have lost control of the movement. It's going all this way to the alt-right, to the neo-Nazis, to the anti-Semites, to the whole thing. They're what's going on now. This is really an interesting moment, because what this is doing is it is forcing people to choose. And this brings me to the last question that you asked, and that was about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a representative from Georgia. You know her as a real flamethrower. She was fervently MAGA. You name it, she's there. She was one of the people who didn't believe Sandy Hook happened. She used to attack David Hogg, when he was just a kid, for, being a crisis actor, all this kind of stuff. But she has a very keen vision for where things are going. And as I say, they're really unsettled. They're unsettled in both parties. But right now, the real focus, of me today, although I'm happy to talk about the Democrats as well, the real focus here is on the Republicans. And by the way, that interest is not because I'm not interested in the Democrats, but right now the Republicans is where the power is. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has been fascinating, because she is not backing away from MAGA. What she's doing is she is giving MAGA an off-ramp by today, for example, appearing on The View, which is a TV show that is a very highly watched TV show that is a talk show of women, older women, and saying that they asked her about her views about QAnon, which is also one of the ways she came to power, and if she had changed, because she said she doesn't believe that stuff anymore. And she said, no, I haven't changed at all. I was just misled by social media and the stuff I read online, just like you have been. Fascinating, because that's an off-ramp. That says, no, I wasn't an idiot. I just read the wrong stuff, which honestly on social media, it's easy to do. She's also embracing really popular stuff. As I say, the Epstein files, the release of the Epstein files is really popular. Like Republicans and Democrats both want that. You know what else both Republicans and Democrats want? Healthcare. She's picking up on these issues. At the same time, and I will nod here to the Democrats, younger Democrats are doing the same thing. And I'm looking at this, and I don't know. I cannot predict the future. But the unsettlement, that's not a word, the choppiness of politics in this moment is one in which definitely things are falling apart. How they get put back together remains entirely unclear. Yeah, maybe the neo-Nazis will win. But maybe enough Americans will say, no, I don't want to be part of a neo-Nazi movement, as they have always done in the past, by the way. And they would rather create a government that actually answers the things that we say we want. Remember, I keep saying to you, articulate what we want, articulate what we want. This is why. Because people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and by the way, I am not at all advocating everybody forget her past or anything else, but watch what these people who want to be reelected do. What you are not seeing from her is her throwing her arms around Donald Trump and saying, I'm your girl. That is over. You're seeing that from Mike Johnson, but you're not seeing it from her. And watching the way people are behaving in this moment is instructive about where they are guessing the country is going. Trump is panicked. He's madly tweeting. Mind you, he's stressed. And I'm not even going to go into that interview with CBS, but you're not seeing that kind of panic from the Democrats, and you're not seeing that kind of panic, political panic. I mean, they're very concerned about their constituents, but you're not seeing that kind of panic from people like Mamdani in New York, or Gavin Newsom in California, or J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, who's frantic about what's happening in his city. But you're not seeing that sort of mad clawing that you saw with whichever Cuomo it is running for office in New York, where he's throwing everything at the wall, trying to say, if you don't elect me, the whole world's going to fall apart. Just the way Trump is saying similarly, elect Mamdani and the whole world is going to end. I'm never going to give any money to New York. Of course he can't do that. That's totally illegal. He'll try it anyway. It'll be challenged in the courts. But in this moment, before you worry about all the noise, look at who's panicking and who is not. And that's not any predictions about what's going to happen. And I'm not at all saying we shouldn't be very concerned. Things are terrible, and we should be concerned about our neighbors who do not have food. We should be concerned about our neighbors who do not have heat, which is also in trouble. We should be concerned about our neighbors who are being picked up by ICE and disappeared. I mean, things are not good. I'm not saying, you shouldn't be worried about all that stuff. But there does seem to be a pattern emerging that maybe belies all the other stuff I just said. So if you're totally stressed out and you just can't deal with any stuff, sometimes take a step back and think, who's panicking? And what are they panicking about? And how does that sound? And somebody, I just saw somebody say, well, he's been rage tweeting forever. It doesn't feel like rage tweeting. It feels like fear tweeting. Who knows? Could be wrong. Anyway, sorry I started late. Once again, I'm going to leave you where I always leave you. I don't know how these elections are going to come out tonight at all. But I will tell you this. Even if the Democrats lose across the board, the momentum of people pushing back against this administration is mounting. Every day it's mounting. Trump's popularity is the lowest it's ever been in both terms. He knows it. Things are only getting worse in terms of the way people are reacting to the Republicans during the shutdown. The pressure is continuing in any number of these places. What we need to do right now is look out for each other, keep the pressure on, and keep the faith. This country's been through hard times before, and as I say, the unsettlement, that's not a word. It's not really like chaos, though. It's the underpinnings, when you're out on the kayak and there's a bad backwash from the ledges, the water is unsettled. It's not that it's rough, it's just unsettled. And that's what it feels like to me now. And what that means is that, there's about to be a movement in one direction or another. And boy, that's sure what it feels like to me right now. Anyway, so do keep the faith, and we'll watch and see what happens tonight in the elections. And then, you know what? Regardless of how they come out, we'll get up tomorrow and work harder, because, even if we get this country back on the right track, One of the things about people recognizing how many things can be damaged by one man is the ability to say, we got to fix some stuff. We got to fix the fact that, places like Walmart and Amazon are employing people who need SNAP to live. That's not okay. People shouldn't be working. I don't think it's okay. People shouldn't be working full time and not be able to afford food for their children. They should be able to afford housing. I mean, this is the richest country in the world. It is insane what we have allowed to happen to our society. And that's the final point here for me today. This is not the government funding stuff. This is not the White House deciding where it's going to use its money. It's our money. This is our country. Those are our tax dollars. We are the ones going to be paying for the bills we're racking up. We should be the ones who get to decide how our money is spent, and we're the ones who get to decide who writes the laws. And you shouldn't have an option of following those laws or not, which is what this administration has been trying to do. So anyway, keep the faith, and we'll get up tomorrow and we will do it all over again. And we will keep doing it until we get to a place where we can take a deep breath and recognize that we have made the world a little bit better than it was yesterday.